Hey guys, Dr. Ben here, Functional Medicine Centers. Going to go over today what blood test should you be getting done to determine what your health status is. A lot of people go to their doctor and what do they say? Well, everything's okay, your cholesterol's a little high, eat better, lose weight. Or, man, it all looks pretty darn good. I think it must just be in your head. How many times have you heard that? Well, hopefully you haven't, but many of our patients have. So I'm going to go over today exactly what you need to be looking at when you go to your doctor. When you're going to get blood work done, you need to look at these different markers. And this is how we figure out in depth what is going on deep down inside somebody. What is that root cause? We find things all the time. We had a guy come in, he's in his early 20s. We went over blood work yesterday. Hey Teresa, good to see you. He went 20 times a day, bowel movements, a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, all these things. They've done scopes and scans and all these things, and there's no damage, no irritation in that gut lining, yet he's going 20 times a day. So what do we find? Well, he's pre-diabetic, he's insulin resistance, he's got fatty liver, he's got this anxiety and this worry and all these things going on in different parts of his body, but not actually in the digestive tract. And so this is that part of taking a step back, looking at all these different markers and figuring out what's truly going on, because guess what he's heard now? That it is all up here. I love talking to patients about this because they'll go, oh, I'm not crazy. I go, well, that's not my job to diagnose you whether you're crazy or not. But I can tell you this, you're not making it up. Good morning, Paula. You're not making it up. It's not just all in your head. There are specific reasons why you're experiencing life like you are. So let's get into it. What are some of the blood work markers that you should look at? Hey, good to see you, Barb. For anybody jumping on, go ahead and pop down below where you're watching from. We love to see everybody. Let us know what state, what city. We see people from Texas, from North Dakota, all the way to California and Virginia, everything in between, and even people from all over the world as well. Philippines, Europe, a lot of different places. All right, so let's jump into this. So when we look at blood work, there's two things that we're looking at. One is we're not just looking at the lab range. So the lab range is basically a bell curve. So if you ever took, hey Liz in Wisconsin, good to see you. Andrea, good to see you in Michigan. Mackenzie in Wyoming. All right, good to see everybody. So the bell curve, if you ever took statistics, is kind of that middle 90% or so of the population. And that's going to be okay in the lab range. So the lab range, so they're going to look at that and go, okay, you're not going to die, you don't have cancer, nothing too severe, so you're okay, eat better, lose weight. Hey Shelly, good to see you up there in Sheridan. But what we look at is, what is that functional medicine range? What is the range that I've found over 20 years of practice? Hey Melissa in Virginia, good to see you. What is that range that we're looking at? So an easy one to think about is vitamin D. 30 to 100 is a pretty typical range that we look at for the lab range that they say is okay for vitamin D. And sorry, I forgot to flip my camera, so these numbers are going to be backwards, but you'll get the basic idea. So 60 to 80 is where the optimal range is for vitamin D. So there's this gray area in each one of these, and whether it's vitamin D or hemoglobin A1C or lymphocytes or all these different markers, we've got this gray area in there. So we're looking for this optimal range. They're just looking for, is somebody going to survive, basically. So that's the basic premise of what we are looking at for our range for blood work. So then we get into some of these specific blood work markers that you want to run. And so one of the basic things you want to do is an anemia panel, and this is going to run your ferritin, your iron, all of the iron binding components, all these different markers to see, one, if somebody has anemia. But guess what? I see way more patients that actually have high iron than we do people that have low iron. And what this tells us, that if that ferritin is high, that's the first marker that I see on all of my blood works. If that ferritin is high, then I know that person has inflammation. I know they have potentially fatty liver. I know that they have insulin resistance going on. They've got all these different cascades of this inflammatory process going on in their body. So stored iron, ferritin, yes, it's a problem if it's low, but if it's over 125 in females or over 150 in males, you are having an inflammatory process, and there's certain markers that we're going to look at. So we've got those anemia markers that you need to look at. Obviously, your vitamin D, you need to make sure that your vitamin D is in that 60 to 80 range, and that's going to be a huge part of your immune system function, your brain function, helping with autoimmune, all types of different things. Inflammatory markers, you want to look at C-reactive protein and homocysteine. Again, sorry that the words are backwards, but you get the gist of it. So C-reactive protein and homocysteine. Shelly, how do you spell that? What are you asking about? Spell ferritin, F-E-R, ferritin, T-E-N, I think it's 2 R's. 2 R's, yeah. F-E-R-R-I-T-E-N, ferritin. So Linda, what about low ferritin? Low ferritin is going to be some type of usually blood loss that we see in the body, usually in the digestive tract. Maybe somebody's just not absorbing as well as they should. Heidi, thank you for spelling those out there. Anemia, ferritin, again, sorry about the backwards on here. Maybe I can change this real quick. So stick with me, guys. Again, sorry about this. And hey, there we go. I didn't know I could do that while we're live. Let me go back to here. There, sweet. Okay, so C-reactive protein and homocysteine, those are both inflammatory markers. C-reactive protein tells us about potential cardiovascular disease. Anything over 1.0 is an increased risk. Anything over 3.0 is a high risk for future cardiovascular disease. Thanks, Paula. I'm glad you guys can read that now. Homocysteine is going to tell us more about brain inflammation. So homocysteine, if it's over 9, is going to be more likely to have brain inflammation. If it's over 15, it's a very high risk for future Alzheimer's and dementia even. So we look at these inflammatory markers. C-reactive protein is a better indicator of potential cardiovascular disease than cholesterol or a lot of different markers out there. So we've got to look at inflammation and what's going on in that body. Then we look at autoimmune markers, and you need to evaluate the ANA and the RF, the rheumatoid factor, and both of these are going to be telling us about autoimmunity. We test these on everybody, and about 20 to 25% of our patients come in with either ANA or rheumatoid factor high, and a lot of them don't even realize it. So ANA is going to be with lupus, Sjogren's, some different autoimmune conditions. Rheumatoid factor is with rheumatoid arthritis. And so both of those are indications that the body is in this inflammatory cascade. We've got to calm it down. We've done a lot of videos on autoimmune and working on that leaky gut and working on getting that vitamin D up to 80 and the blood sugar and the adrenals and all these different things. We've got to calm down that inflammatory cascade. But probably 20-25% of our patients are showing up with these markers, and they did not even realize it for a lot of them. Then we look at the liver markers, and ALT, AST, and GGT. This is the big one here. A lot of people do not run GGT in their regular blood panels. Yesterday I had a guy, he was in his 20s on the ALT and AST, which is a little bit high in my range, but he was 96 on his GGT, and they would not have known that. And that's looking at the fatty liver there. Thanks, Elise, for that sweet comment there. And so this is telling us about potential liver issues, especially fatty liver. We can't diagnose fatty liver off of blood work. That's going to be ultrasound, CAT scan, something like that. But with that GGT high, especially if it's over 20, but definitely over 30 or 40, somebody is creeping into fatty liver, almost guaranteed that their liver is getting larger. Number one reason for this is actually blood sugar swings, highs and lows. In the old days, it was from drinking, but now we're getting that from blood sugar issues. And that can be reversed. Thankfully, the liver, you can cut out half the liver, put it in somebody else, it'll regenerate. It's amazing. The liver is an amazing organ. So you've got to look at that GGT. If you're doing a blood panel, you've got to bring up that GGT. Then we look at thyroid, and for the thyroid panel, you've got to look at the full, complete thyroid panel. So you have to look at the antibodies for Hashimoto's. That's TPO and TG, which is the thyroglobulin. You got to check both of those. Hey Mackenzie, I'm having high liver enzymes and was diagnosed with antitrypsin alpha-1. Need to come see you. Absolutely. We had a 23-year-old and started working with her last year. She was on the liver transplant list from chemical exposure. She had this autoimmune going on with the liver. Now liver enzymes are totally fine. Her doctor said, "Oh, I guess we should probably take you off that transplant list." But they had just done, that's gonna be it. So it's pretty amazing. What we see out there. So antibodies, TPO and thyroglobulin, there's two types of Hashimoto's. You've got to be able to figure out which ones are out of balance there. And then you need to look at both the total T3 and T4 and the free T3 and T4. And both of those are going to tell us different things, whether you're converting, whether you have enough, if you're on medication, if you need to take more or less, a lot of different issues through there. And then the reverse T3 as well. So this is the thyroid panel that you need to be looking at. Good news, people are like, oh yeah, you don't really need to know the Hashimoto's markers or it's too much or whatever. But guess what? It costs about $15 in our cash lab to run those thyroid antibodies. So it's not like something you have to go fly out to the Mayo Clinic, anything like that. You can get those done very easily. And then you can figure out, is your body attacking the thyroid gland or what is actually going on? Then when you start looking at blood sugar markers, so anything with blood sugar, here's the ones that you need to look at. You need to get an insulin test done. You need to get an A1C, and this, I like it non-fasting. So I have a lot of nurses that come in as patients, and many of them, I'll say, hey, what'd you think about doing the blood work non-fasting? And they're like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Why do you do that? So Shannon, do you do all these tests in your office for thyroid? Yes, this is our basic panel. Whether you're 14 or 84, it doesn't matter. We're running this type of a panel because I see things all the time that we wouldn't think that, age matters or whatever. It absolutely, everybody needs to know these type of markers. So non-fasting is crucial because that's real world. What are you actually doing on a day in and day out basis? So blood sugar, we have to run that insulin, that A1C. We run GGT, that's that fatty liver marker. Uric acid is a big one as well. Uric acid, we see that high in people all the time. Uric acid is going to be the marker for gout. It's going to settle those crystals into the joints. That's a huge part of it. Triglycerides. Totally messed that one up. Triglycerides, this is going to be a huge indicator of blood sugar spikes as well. That same 22-year-old yesterday that was having 20 bowel movements a day, his triglycerides were 364. We don't want it over 100, so guess what? His blood sugar is spiking all the time throughout the day. These markers, and even that ferritin, is a huge part of where we're seeing that inflammation and what's going on when these blood sugar swings are out of balance. So we can have these issues, and that A1C can actually be okay. It could be at 5.2, which is almost perfect. A1C is going to be the average. Thanks, I eat triglycerides. The A1C is going to be the average of the last 3 months of somebody's blood sugar. And 5.2 is almost a perfect average, 103. You've heard me talk about 85 to 110. 5.2 is almost perfect. And yet, somebody could be at that A1C, but their blood sugar could be doing this all day, up and down, up and down, up and down. And so that's why we use our glucose monitor, do all these different things. So when you start looking at this blood work, you've got to take a step back. You've got to look at as many things as you can. Throw that net out there. Do we do the blood panel the day we see, or do you order it where we live? Depends where you live. For some people, We'll do that blood work ahead of time. If you're local, you can come in whenever. But if somebody's coming from out of town, we usually do it all on the same day. Yes, we test triglycerides non-fasting as well. So people will be, oh, you know what, those triglycerides are higher because you weren't fasting. But guess what? I want to know what's happening throughout the day in the real world when you are not fasting. Because fasting, it's probably going to hide a lot of things. I'll see insulin up at 80, 100, 120, but if they were fasting, it would be at like 12. It's crazy how high that insulin will get throughout the day, and that's very inflammatory. Lisa, thank you. Can a primary care physician do all these tests? What do I ask to have them have this done? Yes, that they can do it all. Will they? Not sure. This panel is about $2,500 to $3,000 if you just walk in off the street and have the lab do it. It's crazy how expensive they charge for this, even though these aren't out of like new age tests or anything like that. But through our cash labs, they're a couple $100. It's amazing how much we can get these prices down. It's pretty darn neat. Amber, is your office open in Nashville? I was just talking about that. It's going to be in May. We're actually interviewing a doctor out here today. She's flying out and checking out what we do, and if it's a good fit, we'll bring her on and get things cranking in May. So yeah, we are getting close to that Nashville location being ready. So all right, guys, if you have specific questions on what blood markers to do, pop that down below. We'll be checking this thread for the rest of the couple days coming up, and if you have any questions, let me know. But you've got to get to the underlying why. You've got to investigate. You've got to find that root cause. So this is how we fix people every single day, and if you can find these underlying issues, you can get better. So take action, stay strong. We'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.